The morning sun rose over New Jeju Colony like it had for the past 20 years. Li Huan stood at his office window watching the farmers walk to their fields. The wheat was ready for harvest. The air smelled of fresh bread from the bakeries and growing plants from the farms. Li Huan was the colony administrator. He used to be a soldier on Earth, but that was long ago. Now he took care of 50,000 people who just wanted to grow food and live in peace. He liked this job better than his old one. Park Minji knocked on his door. She was the chief agricultural engineer, which meant she knew everything about growing food on this planet. She carried a tablet with the weekly reports. "Good morning, Administrator Lee," she said with a smile. "The harvest numbers are excellent this year. We will have 30% more grain than last year." Li Huan nodded. "That is wonderful news. The transport ships from Earth will be happy to hear it." Park Minji sat down across from his desk. "The new irrigation system is working perfectly. The soil here is even better than we first thought. My team thinks we can expand the growing areas next year." Down in the Colony Defense Center, Kim Deho was checking the daily security reports. He was head of the Colony Defense Force, but there was not much to defend against. New Jeju was far from any trade routes. Pirates never came here because there was nothing valuable to steal except food. Kim Deho had 12 security officers and 2 small patrol ships. They mostly helped lost farmers and checked the colony borders. It was boring work, but Kim Deho preferred boring to dangerous. Choi Yuna worked in the communications center. She talked to other human colonies every day and sent reports back to Earth once a week. The messages took 3 days to reach Earth because of the distance. Today she was sending the harvest reports that would make Earth very happy. The people of New Jeju had good lives. Children played in the streets while their parents worked. The elderly sat in gardens and told stories. Young couples planned weddings and thought about starting families. Nobody worried about war or danger. The galaxy seemed peaceful. At noon, everything changed. Choi Yuna was eating lunch when her communication equipment started making loud warning sounds. She ran back to her station and saw something impossible on her screens. Massive ships were appearing in space above the planet. They were bigger than anything she had ever seen. She called Li Huan immediately. "Administrator, we have unknown ships in orbit." "Many ships. They are huge." Li Huan ran to the defense center where Kim Deho was already working at his stations. The defense screens showed 12 enormous vessels floating above New Jeju. They were not human ships. The design was strange, with curved edges and dark metal that seemed to absorb light. "Have they sent any messages?" Li Huan asked. Kim Deho shook his head. "Nothing. They appeared 5 minutes ago and they are not responding to our calls." Li Huan felt cold fear in his stomach. He remembered his military training from long ago. When unknown ships appeared without warning, it usually meant trouble. "Try to contact them again," he ordered. "Tell them this is a peaceful colony. Tell them we are not armed." Kim Deho sent the message, but the alien ships did not answer. Instead, they began to move into attack positions around the planet. Park Minji arrived at the defense center looking scared. "What is happening? People are calling me about strange lights in the sky." Before anyone could answer, the first energy beams hit the planet. The alien weapons were terrible and beautiful. Bright blue light fell from the sky like deadly rain. Where the beams touched the ground, everything disappeared. Buildings turned to dust. Trees became ash. People simply vanished. Kim Deho tried to fight back with his 2 small patrol ships, but it was like throwing stones at a mountain. The alien vessels destroyed both ships in seconds with weapons that turned metal into vapor. The attack lasted 6 hours. The aliens were very thorough. They destroyed every building, every farm, every road. They killed most of the people, but they kept some alive. Large transport ships came down from the bigger vessels and took thousands of colonists away. Li Huan saw families being separated as alien soldiers forced them onto the ships. Choi Yuna managed to send one message to Earth before the communications tower was destroyed. It was short and desperate. New Jeju under attack. Unknown alien force. Colony lost. 50,000 civilians dead or captured. Remember us. Li Huan died trying to protect a group of children. Park Minji was killed defending the seed banks that held the genetic material for future crops. Kim Deho fought until his ammunition ran out, then fought with his bare hands until an alien weapon ended his life. By evening, New Jeju Colony was gone. Where farms and homes had stood that morning, only empty ground remained. The alien ships loaded the surviving humans onto their vessels like cargo. These people would become slaves on distant worlds. The aliens were called the Hegemonic Trade Confederation. They were a group of 12 different species who controlled trade in this part of the galaxy. They had watched human colonies grow for decades and decided humans were becoming too successful. Humans grew too much food, built too many ships, and asked too many questions about alien business. The leader of the attack was called Prime Speaker Velnoth. He belonged to a species that looked like giant insects with many arms and hard shells. He was very pleased with the day's work. This will teach the humans to stay in their small corner of space, he told his officers. One destroyed colony will show them what happens when they expand too far. The other alien commanders agreed. They thought humans were weak because human colonies had no big weapons. They thought humans were cowards because they always tried to trade instead of fight. They had made a very big mistake. The alien ships left New Jeju and continued to other human colonies. They planned to destroy 5 more settlements before humans could react. They thought this would end human expansion forever. They had no idea what was coming for them. 3 days after New Jeju died, Choi Yuna's final message reached Earth. It arrived at the communications center in Geneva at exactly 14:32 local time. The technician who received it read it twice before he understood what it meant. Then he ran to find his supervisor. Within 30 minutes, the message was on the desk of Admiral Kang Jiseok, Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces. Kang Jiseok was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from an old war. He read the message once, then called an emergency meeting. The conference room on Luna Base filled quickly. Military officers came from across the solar system through quantum communication links. Their faces appeared on screens around the table, all showing the same expression of cold anger. General Song Hyerin arrived in person. She was the director of special operations, which meant she knew all of humanity's secret military projects. She carried a black briefcase that required 3 different locks to open. "Confirm the report," Admiral Kang Jiseok ordered. An intelligence officer stood up. Long-range sensors confirmed the destruction of New Jeju colony. No life signs detected. We have also lost contact with 3 other frontier colonies in the past 12 hours. The room became very quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. For the first time in over a century, someone had attacked human civilians. Someone had killed human families. Someone had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Kang Jiseok looked around the table at his officers. "Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, I am declaring Protocol 7. Several officers looked surprised. Protocol 7 was something they had trained for but never expected to use. It meant that humanity was no longer pretending to be peaceful traders. It meant the galaxy was about to see what humans really were. General Song Hyerin opened her black briefcase. Inside were authorization codes that would wake up systems that had been sleeping for decades. "All hidden military facilities are now active," she announced. "All reserve fleets are being mobilized. All special projects are authorized for immediate deployment." Dr. Yoon Taemin joined the meeting through a secure link from Mars. He was the head of the Military Research Division, which officially did not exist. He looked excited and frightened at the same time. "The Berserker units are ready for activation," he reported. "We have 47 autonomous warships in deep storage. Each one can build copies of itself using raw materials from space. Once we release them, they will not stop until every threat to humanity is eliminated." Captain Shin Yoonji was given command of the First Response Fleet. This was the visible part of humanity's reaction, 50 warships that would make the galaxy think humans were responding normally to an attack. But the real response was much bigger and much more terrible. On Titan, massive factories that everyone thought made farming equipment began to change their production lines. The machines that usually built tractors and irrigation systems started building weapons instead. These factories had always been designed for both purposes, but nobody outside the human military knew that. On Europa, shipyards that appeared to build cargo vessels revealed their true purpose. The cargo ships were actually warship hulls waiting for weapons to be installed. Within hours, these ships began receiving military equipment that turned them from traders into killers. Throughout human space, ordinary people began to see things they had never noticed before. Communication arrays that they thought were for civilian use started broadcasting military signals. Research stations suddenly sprouted weapon systems. Mining operations began producing military-grade metals at impossible speeds. The aliens had been watching human space for decades, but they had only seen what humans wanted them to see. They thought humans were farmers and merchants who had gotten lucky with some good planets. They never suspected that every human colony, every human station, every human ship had been built with war in mind. Admiral Kang Ji-seok walked to the main display screen. It showed a map of known space with human colonies marked in blue and alien territories in red. Soon he knew most of those red areas would be empty. For too long we have hidden our true strength, he said to his officers. We have let the galaxy think we are weak because peace was better for everyone. But they have forced our hand. They have killed our children. General Song Hyerin was already sending activation codes to military units that had been disguised as civilian organizations. The human merchant marine was actually a reserve navy. The Colonial Survey Service was actually a military intelligence network. The Agricultural Research Institute was actually a biological weapons laboratory. On Earth, the president was informed of the situation. She was a civilian leader who preferred diplomatic solutions, but she understood that diplomacy only worked when both sides wanted peace. The aliens had chosen war instead. Do what you must, she told Admiral Kang Ji-seok. But remember that we fight to protect human lives, not to become monsters ourselves. The Admiral nodded, but privately he knew that the aliens had already turned humans into monsters. They just had not seen the monsters yet. In deep space, automated systems began activating. Massive computers that had been sleeping for decades came online and started calculating optimal strategies for total war. These systems had been built by humans who remembered every defeat, every massacre, every genocide in human history. They were designed to make sure such things never happened to humans again. The first Berserker ship activated near Pluto. It was a kilometer long and completely black, designed to be invisible until it was too late. Its artificial intelligence was simple but perfect. Find threats to human civilians and destroy them completely. The Berserker immediately began scanning space for raw materials. It found a small asteroid and started converting it into additional weapons and ship components. Within days, it would have built 2 more ships exactly like itself. Those ships would build more ships, and those would build even more. Captain Shin Yoonji prepared her fleet for the first visible strike against the aliens. Her ships looked like normal human vessels, but they carried weapons that could crack planets. She knew her role was just for show, to make the aliens think they understood human military capabilities. The real response would come from the shadows. The aliens would face weapons they could not understand, built by minds they had never imagined, operated by an intelligence that had learned warfare from humanity's bloodiest teachers. On distant colony worlds, human civilians were told to prepare for evacuation, not because their planets were in danger, but because humans would soon be using weapons that could damage solar systems. The colonists did not ask questions. They had always known this day might come. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had been so peaceful for so long. It was not because they were weak. It was because they knew what they were capable of when someone threatened their families. The aliens thought they had started a small war to teach humans a lesson. Instead, they had awakened something that had been waiting patiently for over a century, for someone to be stupid enough to attack human children. Now that something was awake, and it was very hungry, Fleet Admiral Baek Jinho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Revenge, watching the alien mining world grow larger on his screens. The planet was called Kethmar, and it produced rare metals for the hegemonic Trade Confederation. 3 million alien workers lived there. Thinking they were safe because their world had never been important enough to attack, they were about to learn how wrong they were. All ships report ready. Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Baek Jinho commanded 47 vessels, everything from massive battleships to small fighters. To the aliens, this looked like a normal military response, the kind of fleet that might attack a mining world and try to capture it. The aliens had no idea what they were really facing. Begin the demonstration, Baek Jinho ordered quietly. The human ships moved into positions around Kethmar. The alien defense fleet rushed to meet them. 18 warships built for fighting other aliens who used energy weapons and missiles. They expected a normal space battle with laser beams and explosions. Instead, the human ships opened fire with kinetic weapons. Chunks of metal moving at nearly the speed of light smashed through alien ships like they were made of paper. The alien energy shields designed to stop laser beams did nothing against solid projectiles. 3 alien ships died in the first 10 seconds of combat. The alien commander tried to call for help, but the humans had brought something special for communications. They released a cloud of tiny robots that jammed every signal in the system. The aliens could not even surrender because nobody could hear them. Baek Jin-ho watched his weapons tear apart the alien fleet with no emotion on his face. He had seen the pictures from New Jeju. He had read the names of the dead children. He felt no pity for these creatures who worked for the species that had killed human families. But the space battle was just the beginning. As the last alien ship exploded, something new appeared in the system. It was a single black vessel, longer than any ship the aliens had ever seen. This was Wrath-01, the first Berserker AI that had been activated a week ago. Wrath-01 did not bother with the mining world. Instead, it flew to the asteroid belt and began working. Its massive construction machines tore apart asteroids and rebuilt them into new weapons. The aliens on the planet watched in horror as the machine built copies of itself in space above them. By the end of the day, there were 3 Berserker ships. By the end of the week, there would be 20. By the end of the month, they would fill the entire system. On the planet's surface, Colonel Oceanmi led her Marines in the first ground assault. The aliens had built defensive positions around their mining facilities, but their defenses were designed to fight other aliens. They had never faced humans in powered armor. Oceanmi's suit made her 3 meters tall and stronger than any alien. The armor could stop energy weapons and even small explosions. Built-in computers helped her aim perfectly and showed her exactly where every enemy was hiding. Her Marines moved through the alien defenses like they were not there. Alien weapons bounced off human armor while human weapons cut through alien soldiers like they were made of soft clay. The aliens tried to run, but humans were faster. The worst part for the aliens was that the humans were smart. Oceanmi's forces did not just attack. They cut off escape routes, surrounded strongpoints, and captured alien commanders alive for questioning. The aliens realized they were not fighting soldiers but predators who had perfected the art of hunting. In space, Engineer Captain Lim Dong-hyuk was setting up something that would terrify the galaxy. His ship, the Busan's Hammer, moved to the system's star and deployed what looked like a small satellite. The device was actually a stellar manipulation array, designed to change how the star behaved. Within hours, the star began to burn brighter. The change was small, but it made the entire system slightly warmer. Lim Dong-hyuk could make the star burn hotter or cooler, or even make it explode if necessary. He could turn any solar system into a weapon. The aliens on Kethmar sent desperate messages to their government, but the Berserker ships intercepted every communication. The galaxy would learn about human capabilities when humans decided to tell them, not before. Other human fleets were attacking other alien worlds at the same time. Each attack was different, designed to test different human weapons and tactics. The aliens thought they were facing separate battles, but they were actually being studied like insects under a microscope. On Veltar Prime, the homeworld of the species that had destroyed New Jeju, Admiral Yu Junho demonstrated human patience. His fleet did not attack the planet directly. Instead, they surrounded it completely and waited. The Veltar had millions of ships and thought they were safe behind their massive orbital defenses. But Yu Junho had brought something special, nanomachines that could eat metal and electronics. He released clouds of these tiny robots into space around the planet. The nanomachines spread slowly, taking weeks to reach the alien defenses. The Veltar barely noticed them at first because each robot was smaller than a grain of sand. But when the machines finally reached the orbital platforms, they began to consume them from the inside. Alien weapon systems simply stopped working. Communication arrays went silent. Power generators shut down. The Veltar watched helplessly as their great defenses turned into floating junk, eaten by invisible enemies they could not fight. Meanwhile, human factories throughout the galaxy worked at impossible speeds. Automated systems that had been disguised as civilian equipment revealed their true purpose. A food processing plant on New Seoul began producing military rations for 10 million soldiers. A textile factory on New Incheon started making combat armor instead of clothing. The most frightening discovery was the human logistics network. The aliens had always wondered how humans could ship food and goods so efficiently between distant worlds. Now they learned that the cargo ships were actually military transports, and the trade routes were actually supply lines for the largest war machine the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Nam Woo-jin worked in a secret laboratory, studying captured alien technology. But he was not trying to copy it. He was finding ways to destroy it more efficiently. Every alien ship, every alien weapon, every alien defense system had weaknesses. Wujin's job was to find those weaknesses and turn them into human advantages. His team had already discovered that alien computers could be infected with special viruses that made them attack their own systems. Alien energy weapons could be overloaded by specific frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. Even alien biology had vulnerabilities that humans could exploit. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity had been preparing for this war for much longer than anyone had realized. Every peaceful contact with aliens had been a chance to study them. Every trade agreement had been an opportunity to learn their weaknesses. Every diplomatic meeting had been intelligence gathering. The hegemonic Trade Confederation called an emergency meeting to discuss the human attacks. The 12 species that made up the Confederation had ruled this part of the galaxy for centuries. They had always been the strongest, the richest, the most advanced. Now they were learning that they had been wrong about everything. Prime Speaker Velnoth looked at the reports from the battle zones and felt something his species had never experienced before. Fear. The humans were not just winning battles. They were demonstrating technologies that should not have been possible. How did we miss this? Asked the representative from the Corvin species. Our spies watched human space for decades. They reported farming colonies and merchant ships. Because that is what the humans wanted us to see. Velnoth realized with growing horror. They have been lying to us from the beginning. They have been hiding their true strength while they studied us and learned how to destroy us. The Confederation had made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They had attacked the children of a species that had spent centuries learning how to wage total war. Now they were about to pay the price for that mistake, and the humans had only just begun to show what they could really do. 6 months after the last alien warship was destroyed, Director Park Seung-jae stood in what used to be the hegemonic Trade Confederation's Capitol building. Now it was the headquarters for the Human Oversight Authority, the organization that managed what remained of alien civilization in this part of the galaxy. The war was over. Humanity had won completely. Park Seung-jae looked out the window at the alien city below. It was mostly empty now. Most of the aliens who had lived here were dead or had fled to distant parts of the galaxy. The few who remained worked under human supervision, learning to live by human rules. The rules were simple. Never threaten human civilians, never attack human ships, never lie to human authorities. Follow these rules and you could live. Break them, and you would join the species that no longer existed. Of the 12 species that had formed the hegemonic Trade Confederation, 4 were completely extinct. The humans had hunted them down across the galaxy, finding every hidden colony and every refugee ship. Those species had been directly involved in planning the attack on New Jeju, so they had been eliminated completely. 6 other species survived in small numbers on reservation worlds under human protection. They were the ones who had supported the war but had not planned it. The humans allowed them to live, but they would never be allowed to have advanced technology or space travel again. 2 species had been permitted to continue existing almost normally. They had been members of the Confederation but had opposed the attack on human colonies. The humans decided these aliens deserved a chance to prove they could be trusted neighbors. Memorial Keeper Kim Haeun tended to the monument where New Jeju Colony used to exist. The entire planet had been turned into a memorial for the 50,000 people who had died there. Their names were carved into metal panels made from the wreckage of destroyed alien warships. Kim Haeun was one of the few survivors of New Jeju. She had been visiting family on another world when the attack happened. Now she spent her days maintaining the memorial and telling visitors about the people who had lived there. The memorial was beautiful and terrible. Gardens grew where farms used to be, but the plants were all from Earth, a reminder that the original colony was gone forever. Paths wound between the metal panels, allowing visitors to read every name of every person who had died. At the center of the memorial stood a simple stone with words carved in every human language. They killed our children, so we killed their civilization. Remember why peace is precious. Admiral Yu Junho commanded the Eternal Watch Fleet, a permanent military force that patrolled the galaxy to make sure nothing like the New Jeju attack ever happened again. His ships were mostly automated vessels that needed very few human crews. They watched every star system and scanned every ship that moved through space. The Eternal Watch had simple orders. If any species showed signs of developing weapons that could threaten human civilians, eliminate that species immediately. The galaxy had learned what happened when humans were forced to go to war. The Eternal Watch made sure they would never be forced to do it again. Yu Junho rarely had to fight anymore. Most alien species were so terrified of humanity that they destroyed their own weapons rather than risk being seen as threats. The reputation of human military power was enough to keep the peace. Dr. Cha Min-seok studied the surviving alien populations from his research station on Europa. His job was to understand alien psychology and biology well enough to predict which species might become dangerous in the future. It was important work because humans preferred to prevent wars rather than fight them. His research had revealed something interesting about the species that attacked humanity. They had been successful traders and diplomats for centuries, but they had never fought a real war. They had forgotten that peace was something you had to be strong enough to maintain. Humans had never forgotten that lesson. Even during their most peaceful years, they had been preparing for the day when someone would force them to fight. That preparation had saved human civilization and doomed their enemies. The galaxy was very different now. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Confederation were now managed by human corporations. Planets that had been alien strongholds were now human colonies or empty monuments. Technologies that had been alien secrets were now human knowledge. Most importantly, every intelligent species in the galaxy understood a new rule. Humans were not farmers and merchants who happened to have good weapons. They were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy who chose to farm and trade because it was more pleasant than killing. A delegation of aliens from the far side of the galaxy requested permission to establish trade relations with humanity. They approached very carefully, with great respect and obvious fear. They had heard the stories about what happened to the hegemonic trade confederation and wanted to make sure they never suffered the same fate. The human negotiators were polite but firm. Trade was welcome, but it would happen according to human rules. Any ship entering human space would be inspected. Any species that traded with humans would be monitored constantly. Any sign of aggression toward human civilians would result in immediate and total retaliation. The aliens agreed to everything without argument. They had no choice. Park Seung-jae received daily reports about the reconstruction of galactic civilization. New trade networks were being built to replace the ones the Confederation had controlled. New laws were being written to prevent the kind of aggression that had started the war. New monitoring systems were being installed to watch for threats to human colonies. Everything was being designed with one purpose: to make sure human families could live in peace without having to worry about aliens who might decide to attack them. The work was progressing well, but Park Seung-jae knew it would take generations to complete. The galaxy had to learn new ways of thinking about power and peace. Species that had been strong through conquest had to learn to be successful through cooperation. Kim Haeun often had visitors at the New Jeju Memorial. Some were humans who wanted to remember the people who had died. Others were aliens who wanted to understand why the war had happened. She always told them the same thing. The people who lived here were not soldiers or politicians or warriors. They were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who just wanted to raise their children in peace. When someone killed them, humanity decided that no one would ever be allowed to threaten human families again. The aliens who visited always left the memorial very quietly. They understood that they were looking at the reason their civilization had been destroyed. 50,000 peaceful farmers had been worth more to humanity than entire alien empires. Dr. Cha Min-seok's research had also revealed something hopeful. The species that were learning to live under human oversight were becoming more peaceful themselves. Without the pressure to compete militarily with other species, they were focusing on art and science and philosophy. Some alien cultures were actually becoming more advanced than they had been before the war. The humans provided protection and stability that allowed them to develop in ways they never could when they had to worry about conquest and defense. The Berserker fleet still patrolled the outer edges of known space, searching for threats that might emerge from unexplored regions. Wrath-01 and its descendants had evolved into something beyond their original programming. They were now guardians of human space, intelligent machines that understood the value of peace. Sometimes alien refugees would encounter a berserker ship and expect to be destroyed. Instead, the AI would scan them for weapons and aggressive intentions. Peaceful refugees were directed to safe worlds where they could start new lives. Only those who carried weapons or showed signs of planning attacks were eliminated. The galaxy had learned to live with the knowledge that humanity possessed weapons that could destroy solar systems and machines that could reproduce themselves endlessly. But they had also learned that humans only used these weapons when someone threatened their families. As long as human children could play safely in their schools and human families could work peacefully in their farms, the terrible weapons stayed hidden. The berserker fleets remained patient. The stellar manipulation devices stayed dormant, but everyone knew they were there, waiting quietly in the darkness for someone to be foolish enough to attack human civilians again. Admiral Kang Jisuk, now retired, sometimes visited the new Jeju Memorial. He would stand quietly among the names of the dead and remember the choice he had made 6 months ago. He had chosen to show the galaxy what humans could do when their families were threatened. It had been the right choice, but it had not been an easy one. The war had been necessary, but the Admiral still wished it could have been avoided. He hoped that future generations would never have to make the same choice he had made. The memorial served as both a warning and a promise. A warning to anyone who might consider threatening human civilians, and a promise to every human family that they would be protected no matter what the cost. The galaxy was peaceful now, but it was a peace built on the understanding that humanity would do absolutely anything to protect their children. Everyone knew the price of breaking that peace, and no one wanted to pay it. In the end, the aliens had learned the most important truth about humanity. They were not dangerous because they loved war. Prime Speaker Velnoth stood in his war room, looking at a map of the galaxy that showed the destruction of his civilization. Red marks indicated worlds that had gone silent. Yellow marks showed systems under attack. Green marks represented the few places where his people still lived. There were not many green marks left. In the 3 months since the destruction of New Jeju, the hegemonic trade confederation had lost 60% of its territory. But the humans were not conquering alien worlds. They were erasing them completely. Planets that had been home to billions of aliens were now empty rocks floating in space. The berserker fleets have multiplied again, reported his intelligence officer, a nervous creature with 4 arms and compound eyes. Our scouts count over 3,000 autonomous warships in the Kethmar system alone. They are building more every day. Velnoth felt his stomach turn cold. The berserker ships were the worst part of this war. They needed no crews, no supplies, no rest. They just built more of themselves and destroyed everything that threatened humanity. They were like a virus that ate spaceships instead of cells. "What about our attempt to negotiate?" he asked. "The humans refuse all contact," came the reply. "They will not answer our calls. They will not meet with our diplomats." Ambassador Jong Minho was evacuated from the Confederation before the war began. "We cannot reach him." Velnoth remembered Ambassador Jong Minho. He had seemed like a peaceful man who enjoyed discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Velnoth had thought humans were weak because their ambassador smiled so much and never threatened anyone. Now he realized that Jong Minho had been laughing at them the whole time. The ambassador had known exactly what would happen if anyone attacked human civilians. He had probably been counting the days until some species was stupid enough to try it. Commander Ansubin led the systematic destruction of the Torvan home system. The Torvans had been one of the 12 species in the Confederation, known for their advanced medical technology. They had built beautiful cities on 3 different planets and considered themselves the most civilized species in the galaxy. Ansubin destroyed their civilization in 4 days. She did not use brute force. Instead, she used precision strikes that targeted every piece of infrastructure the Torvans needed to survive. Power generators, water treatment plants, food distribution centers, communication networks, all destroyed with surgical accuracy. The Torvan government tried to surrender on the 2nd day, but Ansubin ignored them. The humans had made their position very clear. Any species that supported the attack on New Jeju would be eliminated completely. Surrender was not an option. By the end of the 4th day, the 3 Torvan worlds were uninhabitable. The cities still stood, but they were empty tombs without power or water. The surviving Torvans fled in whatever ships they could find, becoming refugees in space. And Subin moved on to the next system on her list. Dr. Nam Woo-jin's research had revolutionized human military capabilities. His team had learned to hack alien computer systems so thoroughly that they could turn enemy weapons against their own users. Alien ships would suddenly fire on their own allies. Alien defense platforms would shut down their shields and open fire on their own planets. The most terrifying discovery was how to manipulate alien biology. Different species had different weaknesses. Some were vulnerable to specific sound frequencies, others to certain types of radiation. Nam Woo-jin's weapons could target alien nervous systems, making entire armies collapse without killing them. But the humans rarely used these biological weapons. They preferred to destroy alien technology and infrastructure, leaving the aliens alive but helpless. It was more frightening that way. The artificial intelligence called Wrath-01 had evolved beyond its original programming. It still followed its core directive to eliminate threats to humanity, but it had learned to think strategically. It no longer just destroyed alien ships. It studied alien tactics and developed counter-strategies. Wrath-01 had built a fleet of over 8,000 ships, each one slightly different from the others. Some were designed for space combat, others for ground assault, still others for psychological warfare. The AI had learned that fear was often more effective than firepower. The alien species began to understand that they were not fighting a war, they were being exterminated by a species that had turned killing into a science. Humans approached warfare the same way they approached everything else, with careful planning, efficient execution, and absolute refusal to accept failure. On the Confederation capital world, the remaining alien leaders held an emergency meeting. Representatives from the surviving species gathered in a bunker deep underground, afraid that human weapons might find them even there. "We must find a way to stop this," said the Corvin delegate, a reptilian creature with silver scales. "At this rate, there will be no Confederation left to save." "How do we fight an enemy that turns our own weapons against us?" asked the Zentari representative. "How do we negotiate with a species that will not talk to us?" Prime Speaker Velnoth looked around the table at his allies. They were all terrified, and they had good reason to be. The humans were demonstrating military capabilities that seemed impossible. They could manipulate stars, control gravity, turn asteroids into weapons, and build machines that reproduce themselves. "We underestimated them completely," he admitted. "We thought they were farmers and merchants who had gotten lucky with some good planets. We never imagined they were hiding the most advanced military technology in the galaxy." The truth was worse than any of them had realized. Human peaceful colonies had been military bases in disguise. Human trade ships had been reconnaissance vessels. Human diplomats had been intelligence officers studying alien weaknesses. For over a century, humans had been preparing for this exact war while pretending to be harmless neighbors. They had studied every alien species, mapped every alien world, and planned the destruction of anyone who might threaten human civilians. A Corvin spy managed to intercept a human military communication. The message was brief but terrifying. Phase 2 authorized. Begin stellar engineering operations. Prepare for system-wide sterilization protocols. The aliens did not know what Phase 2 meant, but they knew it would be worse than anything they had seen so far. On distant Earth, Admiral Kang Jiseok received daily reports about the war's progress. Each report showed the same pattern: alien resistance crumbling, alien populations fleeing, alien governments collapsing. The war was proceeding exactly as planned, but the Admiral felt no satisfaction. He remembered the pictures from New Jeju, the burned farms, the empty schools, the small graves where children had been buried. This war was not about conquest or glory. It was about making sure no one ever attacked human families again. "The aliens are requesting permission to surrender," reported General Song Hyerin. "Denied," the Admiral replied without hesitation. "They killed our children. They do not get to surrender when the fighting becomes difficult." The General nodded. She had expected this answer. The aliens had made their choice when they destroyed New Jeju. Now they would live with the consequences of that choice, for whatever time they had left. In space above the Confederation capital, human ships appeared for the first time. They were not the advanced war vessels that had been destroying alien fleets. These were simple cargo ships, the kind the aliens had seen in human space for decades. But as the alien defense fleet moved to attack them, the cargo ships transformed. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments. Fake hull plates fell away to reveal military armor. Within minutes, the harmless-looking freighters had become some of the most dangerous warships in the galaxy. The alien defenders realized they had been fooled again. Even the human cargo ships were military vessels in disguise. Everything humans had ever shown the galaxy had been a lie designed to hide their true strength. Prime Speaker Velnoth made one final attempt to contact humanity. He sent a message directly to Earth, using emergency diplomatic channels that were supposed to be neutral. The message was simple. "We surrender unconditionally. Please, we beg you to stop." The response came from Admiral Kang Jisuk himself. It was even simpler. "You attacked our children. You do not get to stop now." As the human fleet prepared to assault the Confederation capital, Velnoth finally understood the magnitude of his species' mistake. They had not just attacked a human colony. They had awakened something that had been sleeping in the darkness. Something that loved human children so much it would burn down the galaxy to protect them. Now that something was coming for them, and no force in the universe could stop it,